Welcome back to Outside Views, and today we need to talk about the most frustrating paradox in British politics. And here I quote a newspaper headline from a German newspaper. Starmer is blocking Britain's return to the EU. And this isn't a hyperbolic claim, it is the cold, hard reality of political calculation overriding national necessity. And my personal view is, as many of you know already, that the current Prime Minister, by clinging to a set of outmoded red lines, is actively sabotaging the country's economic recovery and betraying the growing, thinking majority that now sees Brexit for the unbelievably foolish mistake it was. And let's not mince words about the context. The official numbers are in, and the damage is terrifying. A major study by economists I quoted several times already, including those from the Bank of England and the National Bureau of Economic Research, has found that Brexit has reduced UK GDP by a staggering 6 to 8% compared to the path if the UK had remained. And this is not just a theoretical model. This is the measured cumulative cost of lower investment, lower productivity, and lower employment since 2016. The Prime Minister himself has recently been forced to acknowledge this, condemning the wild promises of the Leave campaign, and his Chancellor now calls the damage severe and long-lasting. And despite this unassailable truth, he continues to operate on the central flawed premise of the previous government, that joining the EU customs union, the single market, or accepting free movement again are politically impossible. The Prime Minister's policy is to engage in a forward-looking, ruthlessly pragmatic approach. That's the words of his Minister for European Relations, Nick Thomas-Symonds. And this sounds decisive, but in practice it means pursuing only small, politically safe, incremental cooperative deals that are easily lost in the daily media cycle. We see him posing with EU chiefs, talking about a reset. But this reset is fatally hobbled by its own self-imposed constraints. The government's mandate, as articulated by Thomas-Symonds, is to remain outside of the single market, the customs union, and to reject free movement. This is an absolute commitment to leaving the 6 to 8% economic penalty firmly in place, merely seeking to chip away at the edges with some sticking plasters. Look at the evidence of this timid approach. They want to fix the trade barriers for food and drink with a sanitary and phytosanitary agreement, which requires dynamic alignment with EU rules, the very thing the extreme Brexiteers denounce as vassalage. And they are pursuing a youth mobility scheme to allow young people to live, work and study across the Channel. But the Prime Minister and his colleagues like Yvette Cooper insist that this scheme must be capped, time-limited and visa-operated, spending political capital fighting Brussels over the design of a system that everyone knows would be a net benefit. And the EU, particularly Germany, is pressing for a more open arrangement, arguing that the UK will be a net beneficiary as British students who were cut off from previous exchange programs will gain. The UK government's primary focus, however, is not the opportunity for its young people, but the fear of being accused of opening a backdoor for immigration by the noisy anti-immigrant political fringe. The failure to achieve meaningful progress is already evident in the most critical area, the security and defense we talked about this month. The UK government wanted to join the EU's €150 billion Security Action for Europe, or SAFE, loan facility to help its defense industry integrate into Europe's critical rearming effort against the threat from Russia. And the talks, as you all know, broke down. And why? Because the EU, with the French playing a key role, demanded an exorbitant entry fee, a sum equivalent to about 10% of the UK defence budget, to ensure that Brexit does not appear to bring benefits without cost. Rightly so. And the UK government, adhering to a strict value for money mantra that feels absurd when faced with the cost of war, walked away. They chose to haggle over an entry fee rather than embrace the strategic necessity of deep security cooperation. And this shows a staggering lack of strategic vision. They are prepared to make minor regulatory compromises on food and student visas, but when it comes to the large-scale strategic issues like defense and the customs union, the political courage vanishes. And this avoidance of the real issues is rooted in a political fear that I find unforgivable. The Prime Minister's team openly dismisses any move towards a customs union, which would immediately remove much of the daily bureaucracy for businesses as Brexit redux and going back to the arguments of the past. His Minister for European Relations argues that aligning with an EU customs union would not be sensible because it would unravel the new trade deal signed with the United States. That signed trade deal is not the big deal they promised, by the way. But honestly, this is a political fig leaf for paralysis. That US deal is a national security alignment that has been criticized for being deeply concerning and for creating new unwanted foreign policy dependencies. And moreover, the economic benefit of any independent trade deal, including the one with India, is dwarfed by the estimated 6 to 8% cost of being outside the single market and the customs union. The Prime Minister is trapped between the economic reality and the political ghost of Nigel Farage. He has been explicitly warned that attempting to rejoin any customs union would be complete fuel for reform, meaning the hardline anti-EU populist party. So, the political decision is to sacrifice the prosperity and security of the nation to avoid providing electoral fuel to a fringe rival there. And that is not leadership, it's a failure of nerve. This is the definition of political inertia. A government that knows the answer, but is too terrified to speak it, condemning the country to long-term decline simply to preserve its short-term political stability. And the worst aspect of this is the chilling effect it has on the entire political landscape. The only parties that are now willing to call for what is clearly the correct long-term strategic goal, enter the EU again, are the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. And frankly, that small party positioning is meaningless without a credible path to power. The vast, thinking, pro-European majority of the British public, the 2/3 who now view Brexit as a failure, have been abandoned by the one party that could actually deliver change. The Prime Minister is effectively acting as the guardian of Brexit, preserving the failure of his predecessor out of a misplaced sense of caution and a profound lack of ambition. He is choosing to manage the decline incrementally rather than confront the painful but necessary truth. And this is why I believe the Prime Minister is blocking Britain's return to the EU. He's not doing it out of sincere Brexiteer conviction, he is doing it out of political cowardice. He is clinging to a manifesto commitment, no single market, no customs union, no free movement, while his government is forced to break every other promise because the underlying economic policy is built on sand. The United Kingdom is wasting precious time in a turbulent geopolitical era, pursuing timid sector-by-sector deals, while the true solution, a move back into the single market with full acceptance of the economic and political trade-offs, sits on the shelf, untouched. And the Prime Minister is proving to be a politician too small for the historical moment, one who prefers the tactical victory of avoiding a political row to the strategic necessity of national renewal. And I know tomorrow is Christmas, and so I want to end it. I will not be very, very confrontational tomorrow. I will do something very different tomorrow. But let's end this one with kind of a wish list for Christmas. Not so really, but let's go into some hypothesis. The best thing that could happen to this discussion would be someone in the Labour Party with the courage to do what is necessary. And we all know Starmer's seat is wobbly. Someone else from the Labour Party with the bravery to pull that through. To take the seat in 10 Downing Street. And to bring prematurely a new manifesto to his party. I know it's not working like that in Britain usually, but I can put up my wish list here. A new manifesto to his party with joining the EU again, as hard as that would be, as the main topic, and a Labour Party from now on standing on that ground and bringing at latest the next election in with that manifesto main topic. That would be bravery. And that would just take the votes away from the Lib Dems and the Greens, on if that's the most important point. I know that a lot of people still fall for the immigration and what not stuff. But that's why I'm saying this has to happen now. Because if they are running in the next election, there are rumors about this anyway. If they're running the next election on the rejoin topic, they have to start the campaign now, because of how everything is working in social media, etc. nowadays. And then they would get their honest opinion of the British people of what to do. You don't always need a referendum. If they win a major majority on the topic of rejoining, that, from my point of view, would be referendum enough. But they are not brave enough to do that. So this is just a wish list. And from where I'm sitting, I'm not telling you that the EU would let them in, that the members of the EU would let them back in. And you know how hard the process is. I made a whole series of videos on that process. But that would be the honest way to go. But as I said, it's a kind of wishful thinking, although how much wish is there in me? Let's put that to the side. That would be honest, and then we would see how the public will decide on that one. But it will not happen. I don't think so. Nevertheless, let's see how the future unfolds with that government.